Hi there, today's book is By the Light of the Moon by Dean Koontz. The main characters in this book are Dylan, he's an artist, and we also meet his younger brother Shep, who is a highly functioning autistic person. They are about 10 years apart, I believe, and Dylan is his guardian since their mom died, and their dad has been deceased for years now. They also cross paths with Jillian, who is a stand-up comedian. Now, they met when Dylan had stopped at a motel on their way to an arts festival. Dylan had left Shep in the room working on a puzzle and went to go get them something to eat. Now, on his way back, he was accosted by someone. He wasn't aware. They just snuck up behind him and he was drugged. And so when he came to, he was back in his room. Shep was still on the floor working on the puzzle. But the guy, he realized that had him tied to the chair was a doctor. His name was, we find out later, is Dr. Proctor. So the guy injected him with some serum, and he mentioned that this was his life's work. He wasn't going to let them destroy it, and that he would be in danger after he's injected with this, because if they know that he is, then they're going to want to kill him to stop the work that he was doing. We find out that the serum that he's injecting into Dylan contains nanobots. So, but he also says that the reaction from person to person to the serum is different. What he didn't say, though, is what the purpose of the serum is. So they're just kind of left on their own with that. So shortly after he finished injecting him, he left a knife nearby for him to be able to unstrap himself. But did warn him that there are people who are going to be coming. So if he's going to get out of there, he needs to do so fast. So Jillian also unwittingly ran into the doctor. She was on her way to get ice, I believe, down the hallway at the motel. And just in passing conversation, I think he said, Dr. Proctor said something about peanuts. And they just had a really tiny exchange as they were walking by. And what do you know, when Jillian went back to her room, there was Dr. Proctor, and before she could say anything, really, or do anything, she was drugged, and we later find out that she was also injected as well. So this is how they ran into Dylan, was when she was outside. She was like, mentioned something about a doctor, and then now her car was missing, and so Dylan kind of put two and two together and realized that they had the encounter with the same person. So Dr. Proctor had taken off in Jillian's car. So now she didn't have a vehicle, so Dylan was offering her a ride. So, of course, she's arguing back and forth about something, and so he decided, all right, just take your stuff out my car because I have to go. So while he was about to unload her stuff from his car, he noticed that a group of Suburbans are pulling into the motel, coming in with quite a sense of urgency. And the men who got out were big, tall guys. They were dressed like golfers, but he knew they weren't, and realized that they must be the guys that Dr. Proctor was mentioning. So he was like, okay, I'm going to get the stuff out of here. And so shortly after that, there was a big explosion, and they realized that that was Jillian's car that Dr. Proctor was in that had exploded. So now they have to really get moving. So they made their escape. They're on their way out of town, and Dylan starts to have some effect from the serum. He started muttering and sputtering, and he said he needed to turn the car around, and he couldn't really explain why. He just knew that he needed to go somewhere. And at that point, he didn't really know where he's going. He was just compelled to go somewhere, and then he ended up on this house on Eucalyptus. Was the street or avenue? Eucalyptus. So when he got there, he realized that the house belonged to the waitress who had served him the food at the diner. It was an older lady, like a grandma. And he was compelled to go there because there was some violence that was impending there that he needed to take care of. So shortly after that, they were back on the road again. Now, they had stopped to the bathroom so Shep could use the bathroom. And when Shep came out, he noticed that Shep came out a different stall than he went in. And he was like, didn't you go into stall 1? And, came out of stall 4. And of course, Shep only communicates sometimes. And he was like, well, I just don't foresee Shep dragging himself on the ground to come out in another stall. And he just like, this is crazy. Maybe I just didn't notice, which stall he went into. So then later, Dylan realizes that, Shep is communicating more. And then at one point, Shep had moved them from one location to another. Like he wanted something to eat. I think he was looking for, was it cake? Was that the instance where he was looking for cake? But anyway, he had moved them from where they were and just to another place. And so he was like, oh my goodness, Shep, you cannot do this. Gave him a big lecture. This is bad. Don't do this, because of course it just was lucky in this instant that somebody just didn't see them just poof and appear out of nowhere. So anyway, they later were accosted again by this group of men who were after them. And so after this long lecture to Shep, now he has to try to undo this directive that he gave him. And there's a lecture again to convince Shep that he needed to fold them out of there. And right at the 11th hour, they had broken down the door and they were in, were they in the bathroom? I know they had broken down the door, and at the 11th hour, Shep was able to fold them out of there. And they ended up going to their old house. And I believe, they called this being able to move from one place to the next. They called it folding because, it was in present time. But then in the future or shortly after that, Shep was able to fold them into the past, because we find where when they went to their house, they were in a scene where they saw a younger Shep sitting at the table working on a puzzle. Now, it was here that we realized that, there was some history between their family and Dr. Proctor. Although Dylan and Shep didn't really know him, we see where in the past that he was at the house looking for something. And so they realized that, they had some encounters before. So anyway, after that, Dylan was compelled to go to another place, and they ended up at a wedding that was going on in California. And this was somewhere that Jilly knew. And Dylan didn't really know why he was there, but, this is a place that was familiar to Jillian. But anyway, they had to stop another horrific event at this location. They were compelled to do that, and they did what they needed to do there. So after that happened, Jillian was looking for something in her purse, and she found the peanuts that she had picked up that belonged to Dr. Proctor, because she had figured that she needed to find this guy, and maybe that the bag of peanuts would have fingerprints, and if they need to go to the police, that's something that they could use. So Dylan ended up touching the bag of peanuts, and then he picked up some psychic energy, or they called it psychic spores or something that he picked up from touching things. So we realized that that's an ability of his. And then Jillian gets premonitions, and then of course Shep can move now from place to place, and it seems he can move in time as well. So he was compelled to go to, he saw this house that he needed to go to. So when he's talking about this house, and he was talking to Jillian and asking Jillian, do you feel it too? Do you know this? Are you familiar? And then Shep started talking about the house as well. And so Shep ended up folding them to the house. And we find out that this house belonged to Parish Lanter, who is a TV personality that Jillian is familiar with, because his talk show is about like conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But he didn't really know why they're there. Nobody knew why they were there. But anyway, when they went there, Parish was expecting them. So, you know, he knew they wouldn't have any clothes, and he knew that Shep wanted cake and all that. So it seemed as though he had some abilities as well. So what they find there is something unexpected, because somebody that they thought was dead is there as well. And so they wanted to, you know, there was a little back and forth as far as what to do about this. And it so happened that Shep was the one who made the decision as to what should happen to this person. And so knowing that Parish Lanter has the abilities, there's also Jilly, Dylan, and Shep with abilities, and they realize that the effect that the serum has on them is that, you know, whenever something happens or whenever they encounter the situation, they are compelled to do the right thing. And there's just no way out around it. They just have to do what they feel pretty much in themselves that they must do. And so they realize that their mission really is to do the right thing, and they'll do whatever they can to help, you know, people in need as much as possible. So this one was another good one from Dean Koontz. I enjoyed this. The only thing that I would have liked to see a bit more about was the relationship between Dr. Proctor and their dad, Shep and Dylan's dad, and also more about their mom as well, because there was a scene when they went back in time with their mom as well. But I don't feel that this took away from the book. That was just me being nosy. So I would definitely recommend this one. 4.5 stars. I enjoyed it thoroughly. There was no predictable anything in this book. So if you like these types of novels, this will be a great one for you. So if you have read or listened to this book, let me know your thoughts. Until next time.